A warm welcome from our television, TALKWALK. This is Minoli de Almeida, bringing you a new series on the psychosocial impact of post-COVID, which has made us victims of fear, anxiety, and confusion. This series is designed and intended to help us overcome this and adapt to the new normal. We begin today with focus on education, challenges in education, and as panelists we have Professor Amal Kumarage from the University of Moratuwa, Irushi Tenakun, an artist, illustrator, and into dabbling in animation, Ashok Ferry, who doesn't need any introduction, Sri Lanka's best-selling author, and Shanti Vijayasinghe, research in parenting and early childhood. Let's get on with the talk show. Starting with Amal, you being the university don of that prestigious University of Moratuwa, who have scored many firsts in the field of education. What is your advice to the viewers?
Yes, so we must be reflective at this time because education has been disrupted, and I think people are reacting now to the physical disruption that we've lost couple of months, kids are at home, how do we catch up, and lost syllabi and all of that. Yes, of course those are the immediate things, but I think the whole delivery of education I think is going to be permanently disrupted. So we have disrupting technologies, and that's what has hit education. So post-COVID is going to be very different. Change has come to stay. The technology has been maturing over the years because we are always a little resistant to change because other options are available all the time. Not very many institutions or even countries actually pushed education to use the digital systems that were available. But with COVID, it took no more than 3 weeks for the entire system to move from the residential face-to-face, what people call the brick and mortar type of education, to online. So change is possible, and universities in particular, although we are supposed to be training people to bring change, to manage change and so on, we are generally the least, the most resistant to change. So, but it has happened now. I mean, we had no discussions, we had no debates, we just did it. And I think that's been the story across the world. You've been pushed into a situation where there were no options, and it has happened. So I think the discussion now is mostly centered around, how do we deal with the logistics of the change? How do we catch up what we've lost? But I think the bigger discussion that the education sector and government, and in fact even parents and educators need to get involved in is, how do you use this technology? And what are the pluses and the minuses of that? Sri Lanka's education system had many problems. So obviously now we have more problems to solve. But then again, this is indeed an opportunity where I think we can try to solve some of the unsolved problems we've been carrying for decades. So would we use that to actually learn from other countries, make use of this opportunity to make it a blessing, so that at least in the next year or two, and definitely in the next generation of kids, we would have a better product of education that we can offer the students.
Brilliant advice. The bureaucrats, I hope you're listening, because we need this change as quickly as possible, system change. And to Irushi now, Hiroshi, tell us all about your animation, your art, your illustrations. We are waiting excitedly to see your animation.
Yes, I think we'll be watching some of my recent work in a little while, but I think what I want to speak about is the importance of art in this post-COVID time. And I mean, as an artist, I've just seen, like, for example, recently there was this survey done in Singapore where artists were labeled as the top non-essential job. But of course, an artist was hired to do the beautiful illustrated poster that showed this infographic.
Oh.
So it's very ironic, and if you look anywhere in all these the posters that you would see, an artist was hired to make them. And so, I mean, even the videos that you see on TV, the people behind the set here, they're all artists in some form, and they're so important to share this message and to share safety and health precautions and all that. And also, I mean, from an entertainment aspect, I think we were talking with Ashok a little earlier that that it's so important. You need films, you need music, you need books now to survive, especially under lockdown. And well, yeah, so there's a key role.
So, in your opinion, it's the artists are underutilized.
Of course, underutilized, and I feel like people don't realize the role of artists at this point.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I think we can talk a little more in detail.
Ashok, you don't need any introduction. You are Sri Lanka's best-selling author. Unfortunately, it is very worrying that reading has taken a backseat because of overindulgence in technology. What have you got to tell our viewers?
In my case, I keep getting sort of told, you are a writer, you're used to working alone, you must be quite used to this lockdown, etc. The thing is that I didn't write a single word during COVID. I had just finished a novel and that had gone off to the publishers, so I was done, and I won't think of another novel for a couple of years. So sadly, or truthfully, I have to say that I didn't write a single word. However, I read everything I could find in my house. I was reading the laundry lists and the shopping, anything I could find. It was
lovely.
It was, I mean, we were desperate for books.
Absolutely.
My wife and I, we were scouring the place, we were borrowing books, and people were dumping books on us that were people who were leaving the country, etc. So I got to read lots of stuff that I wouldn't have read for maybe another 10 years. I read a book on Chinese houses, something on Islamic architecture, something else. And then, of course, loads of just plain thrillers, you know. So, but the point I'd like to make is this, that you're quite right, Minoli. I mean, reading has taken a real back seat here, particularly reading hard copy. You can read stuff on the internet. Now, you will argue till you're blue in the face that that's as good as reading a hard copy. So I'm sorry to have to disabuse you of that. It is nothing like as good, principally because what you see on the internet, and I mean creative art or creative writing, etc., for whatever reason, it's heavily edited, it's redacted, it doesn't have the same quality as a published book. So for all you kids out there, I mean, the one word of advice I'd give you is read anything you can lay your hands on, particularly in English. I mean, Shanti and I, we were talking earlier about the importance of English here. Now, I'm on thin ice here because I know the authorities will say, no, we're absolutely fine with Sinhala and Tamil, and I'll probably get shot down for saying it. But really, you cannot progress without some knowledge in English. So read anything you can find in English.
Totally agree, because we neglected English so much, and there seems to be a frustration in all of us.
Yes, and
through this.
And sadly, that frustration comes later when you get to university.
Absolutely.
And you find other people who are better.
Can speak, yes.
And you think, why was I not told the secret before?
And even aggression. I feel aggression is through.
There's a huge hidden aggression.
Not being able to express yourself.
Yeah.
Shanti, you are in research of parenting and early childhood. I'm sure the viewers will want to know lots about how to raise children. especially at a time, the most difficult time like this?
Thank you, Minoli. So, my research is on human behavior, basically. And COVID has really opened my eyes to what people have been through. Not because they were suddenly without food or the essentials. It's to do with what can I do for my child? Why is he like this? Suddenly the penny dropped from the parents' eyes, and whatever the teacher has been talking about to the parent, saying your child is lacking in attention, the parents have been in denial for years, and then suddenly these 2 months have told them a lot of things about their children. So my research is on human behavior and parenting. But basically, we have learned as educators, as early childhood facilitators, we've learned that parents have another part to take. This is not something that is not going to go away next week. It's going to be there for the next 2 years or 3 years. And then how equipped our parents and how equipped our teachers, how equipped our schools to take on this liability. Can we go for the next 3 years with on and off lockdowns? Are we ready? Can the children be by themselves in isolation once again? Because kids are going crazy, I can tell you that. Children are having lots of information, but they can't deal with that information. They can't share the information with their friends. And people say, you can go on Zoom platforms, you can learn, you can do your academics. But is it just academics we are talking about? Because when we talk about lockdown or curfew, you are in isolation. Some children haven't even spoken to their parents for, let's say, two weeks, except, of course, the mother makes food and they come to the table, and that's something good because they eat together. But there are parents who have told me, my son hasn't spoken to me for 2 weeks. I just give him the food, he eats it, and he gets it because he doesn't want to talk to me. What are we doing to the children of Sri Lanka? Are we in tune about the psychosocial impact that we are bringing on? Opening schools is fine, but how many children are ready to go back to school? How many parents are not going to send their children back to school because of the fear? And that's a real fear. That's a real fear. Because if your child is identified with COVID, the entire system breaks down again. So children are in a fear psychosis. Parents are also in that particular, and they have to work from home. We have to understand that there has to be money to run the home. I'm talking across the board, not just people in advantageous economic situations. Across the board, there are people who are begging for food because their children are hungry. Also, on the other side, they are hungry for cornflakes. They want a particular brand. What kind of children are we bringing up? So my issues are real. My issues are mainly subjected to behavior and childhood behavior, how it will be impacted in the years to come. Because it's not about getting what you want, it's about getting what you need. What you need for your soul, what you need for your mind, what you need for your body.
There you are, parents. Mostly it's psychological, psychosomatic, all deprivations. You have to, as parents, inculcate values. Children today don't have any values. They are brought up very selfish. Do you all agree with me that the selfishness of parents goes down to the children? We are okay, so why worry about others? Think of the other end of the spectrum, where some children don't even have a cup of tea during the day to go to school.
Oh, yes.
So how do we make this balance, remove this balance, this deprivation, and increase the happiness. And actually, this is living. You have to live, you have to have food. So there you are, viewers. You're welcome to ask questions, and we are there to answer you.
So when you say we, Minoli, who is we?
All of us,
Yeah.
we all of us are
Because-
guilty of this.
Because when you say we, it means that only the 4 or 5 of us and the people who are around.
No, I
People
mean
will
general.
watch. Yeah, exactly. You know,
Yeah, no,
should
I think this discussion has to come out in society, and I think we are still, as I was saying earlier, we are still trying to cope with the immediate changes. Yes, of course.
Sure.
But I think we are in a situation where we need to forge the future, and some people have used the word, we have to reimagine education. What is it that we
So
have
true.
to do? And as Shanti was saying, I mean, we don't know what the future holds with respect to COVID. We talk about post-COVID, well, I mean, we are not even there yet.
no, not there. Yes.
So, I mean, we could have this system extend like this for some time. We don't know. We could have it come back again. And how do we handle education in that? People are even putting names. They call it toggling between. You know, you may have physical teaching, and then you may have to go back to online. And people are talking about doing hybrid as a permanent solution. So I think we are in this time where we've got to reimagine that as to what is suits us. What suits an advanced economy may not necessarily, I mean, might work for some schools in Colombo, but for by and large the mass schooling system. So there's a lot of discussion that needs to take place at all levels, and I don't see it happening. And I think the ministries, the educators, the teachers now need to take time off, even in their own schools. How are we going to handle this? Because this is come to stay, but we even don't know what this would mean.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
how do
exactly.
we handle the next 3 months, the 1 year, the 3 years? One thing we know, it's not going to be what it was last year.
So I'm a little concerned also, because we are all right in Colombo, like you said. But what about those children who have to trudge 2 miles to get to school? They don't have 4G. They don't have, their parents are farmers. Where are they going to get the access to their WhatsApp? And the teachers, I spoke to teachers in Anuradhapura and different parts of the country. Say, api WhatsApp kero. But the thing is, it is only a few children who are going to benefit from this. And you know, like you said, Minoli, we are a very selfish country now, because if it is your WhatsApp, I'm not going to share with others. It's mine. So that selfish streak is also coming through as well. And I'm concerned as an individual, as a citizen, as an early years educator. I don't want children to grow up with this selfish notion, saying that this is my house, this is my car, this is my whatever, and then I am all right. I don't know about the next door person. So this is a very damaging way of taking things forward. We need to, like you said, we need to get schools, educators, psychologists, writers, everyone, people in society, in community. How are we going to do it?
My fear is that we will have a nation of mental illness, because
True.
this is taking the toll on the children. They can't express. You know, to be deprived of happiness, of meeting up with friends. How can you do studies or be in that mask? It's not humanly possible. You can't breathe properly in that.
And also children, teenagers are finding it very difficult to convey their feelings to their parents, like the 2 kids who jumped off the cliff, and because they were having a love affair and the parents were not agreeing to it. They're just 15 and 16. They are children. They're not adults. Obviously, they didn't have any connection to adults, and there was no counseling. Now, this counseling factor is a very important thing. You as a counselor, we know how important this is.
The point is, in our culture,
This is what I was getting at.
underutilized.
Yes.
Because we cannot have any kind of mental illness in our families, because that will ruin our whole family.
Yeah, it is a stigma.
So this is a stigma that we have to get rid. Anybody can get depressed. But to face the reality, you've got to have help. Please. Yes.
Sorry, and yet, Minoli, I mean, you're absolutely right. In spite of all that, we probably have one of the highest rates of mental illness in the world, because we certainly have one of the highest rates of suicide.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So the two things are
Yes.
allied. It occurred to me that it's kind of ironic that our kids who are so into their little machines, you see loads of kids gathered together at somebody's birthday party. They're not talking to each other. They're on their little machines.
How rude is that?
No, but the funny thing is this, that yeah, of course it's rude, but ironically, now it's nature is being very passive aggressive here and saying, well, if that's how you want to communicate, I'm giving it to you. COVID. You're stuck in your home, so you can be on your machine. And it's only then we realize how really important it is, that one-to-one confrontation between you and your teacher, you and your mother, you and your sister, you and your best friend.
That is why the communication, the miscommunication from child to parent, it will take
totally
a long
lacking.
time.
Yes.
Totally lacking.
It's
Some-
lacking.
Some homes, they're frightened to talk to their parents.
Yeah.
Because of discipline.
But I
They
do
think
feel
it's discipline.
I do feel it's a universal thing. It's going in that direction, that children are talking
So
less
sad
and less.
then.
And I always used to say that we are losing the powers of speech. You know, our children are not
Absolutely.
half as. I mean, my children say I talk too much, and that's probably true. But as time goes on, we are losing the powers of public speech, private speech. Everything is on this thing.
And what is it?
Yeah.
What happens?
And also-
Isolation. Isolation.
We have this tendency to like create something and then be addicted or even to worship it in the end.
Yes.
And I think that's what's happened to a lot of technology today.
Yes.
I work in the field of transport, and I think that our motor vehicles we have become addicted to that, and we have a lot of obesity and many other
Absolutely.
things.
Yes.
It's taken us 100 years to realize that,
Yeah.
and still we are not willing to do something about it. So technology and the information technology that we have, it's brought a lot of change, positive change, but I don't think we are really curbing it in a manner that is helpful. But let's look at it. I mean, picking up from what you said now, a lot of Sri Lanka's education, right through into university, is about transfer of knowledge. It's knowledge dissemination, and I mean that's getting outdated now. I mean, like students actually have much
More
greater
now.
access than their teachers have.
Yes.
Those days, children learn from the many years of experience parents had. But now, we ask kids to tell us many things because they are much better at getting that information and giving you exactly what you need. So that system obviously has to change. It has to change. So this is where technology might be much, much better than our doing that up there, because we cannot keep pace with what technology can gather
But
together.
you must
and give.
remember, we were not born in the techno era.
Yeah, but we are living in it and we can't change that.
I think
But-
I would like to comment on that, though. I mean, on a more positive note about technology, because I am an artist and I'm also an educator, and for the past decade I've always found the combination between these two. So when I teach English at a university here, so I always encourage students that to sort of self-learn and to figure to use technology as a creative release almost. So for my illustration and animation work, it's all self-taught because the resources are unlimited if you know where to look. And
I mean that's exactly right. So that's what I think. The different components of education. Definitely, this knowledge thing. We need to know how to use technology in that sense. You're talking about the next one, what we would call co-creation, or even research, or that. Still, technology cannot do that. As an author, as a illustrator, it has to come from you. So education must highlight those things, and we are not in our education system even giving recognition to that, and even valuing that, valuing it as a means of communication, as a means of expression. So all of that needs to now be repositioned If you are doing face-to-face teaching, these are some of the things that now need to be.
We have to stop now for a commercial break. We'll see you in a bit. Continuing on TalkWalk, Hiroshi, you were saying about technology and your teaching. You want to elaborate on that?
Yes, I've been an educator and an artist for the last decade or so, and I've always found this balance between the two, in that I've used technology to self-learn my art and animation and creative aspect, and I've also used my creativity in my education. Recently I just completed my master's, and my research was on graphic novels and autobiographical graphic novels, and how traumatic personal histories and experiences can be told through comic form. So there's always been this, I've always found this middle point, I think, between the two. And when I teach, I've been teaching English, so when I teach, I've always encouraged my students to use this technology, because it's an unlimited resource. You just need to know what questions to ask and what you're looking for, and you almost have everything at the tip of your fingers. Of course, with the exception that we mentioned earlier, where not everyone has the privilege, but once again, I mean, it's there. If you look for it, it is out there. So I think even in my animation work, it's all self-taught, and I think you don't really need to spend a lot on creativity. If you know where to look, and if you have just very simple resources, at the end of the day, you can tell very big stories, and you can you can sort of release, you can have a creative release almost with this sort of, if you know how to approach technology. So again, there's pros and cons to everything, including technology. So
brilliant!
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Anybody else wants to add?
If I may pick up from there, I think this is where we need to, well, at least one of the areas where we really need to address. Historically, our education system has been more knowledge oriented. It's delivery of knowledge, it's assessment of knowledge, it's appreciation on knowledge, and your certification on knowledge in the end. Well, as I was saying earlier, I mean, there are alternate methods for that as well, and knowledge is changing so fast. I mean, what are you certifying anyway? You know, it's outdated in a few years. But what we have lost by trying to do that is exactly what Hiroshi is saying, and that is unlocking the creativity in people, bringing to the fore and also the other emotions which are suppressed, the emotions of sadness, of empathy, and these are the things that actually will be most valuable in the future. Now let's take, I was reading about from the World Economic Forum of last year, where they listed the jobs that are actually becoming necessary and the ones that are on the way out. And surprise, surprise, I saw nursing is going to be more important than that of a doctor. Why? Because the doctor is diagnosing with his knowledge, and today we have artificial intelligence which might actually combine so many specialists into one platform. But the therapeutic, the care being given by a nurse cannot be replaced. So we need to prepare people to minister to each other, to be able to relate to the whole people. And also the other thing is about value judgment. People making decisions based on moral factors and ethical parameters. And again, our schools don't do this because we are so obsessed with knowledge,
the technical
and knowledge, and getting people there. And I think post-COVID would give us an opportunity to to sort that imbalance we've been carrying in our education system for decades now. So it's not only about language, and language certainly has, I think, created disparities, but I think and also again technology crosses that boundary as well. People don't necessarily need to know a lot of language to be able to use that. So we are in a position to actually solve a lot of the problems we have had in the past. But yet at the same time, we are going to go into a new set of challenges where rapid realignment is needed. And unless we start from policy level to planning levels, and I think we might very well lose this battle also in education.
So it's a paradigm shift we are looking for.
Yes,
exactly.
I do worry though, Amal, that technology and our sort of increased need of it with this illness and so on will also play into the weakness that we Sri Lankans have always had for the qualification, for the end result. For us, that end certificate is much more important than the 3 years of education that is supposed to have preceded it. So you find in schools people learning their answers parrot fashion. They don't think about it. And quite often, when a young person finishes university and then goes abroad or something, he has to relearn, re-educate himself, because he finds that in the actual workplace, it's not the exam
like
answers that help. You have to think laterally, you have to think in other ways. So to get back to this idea, technology does a huge amount. I'm not trying to denigrate it. I think it's marvelous, and COVID has proved how marvelous it is and how necessary it is. I do worry at the same time that it's not enough. That for one thing, if all the answers are there in front of you without the value judgments, as you said, your creativity, your ability to judge, which is the weight that you ascribe to each thing, is going to disappear over time. It's as if you know too much. I always use the example that a person who is very, very academic and knows his Tolstoy and his Dickens and his Shakespeare will quite often make a very bad writer, because their own imagination, their own creativity is no longer there, because you're so full of everybody else's ideas. Now that's fine, I'm not saying that that's bad. Everybody else's ideas, and they're much greater than you are in that sense, and you have a lot to learn from them. But where does that leave your own creativity, however small and humble and bad it may be? It is still your creativity. It's like you learning this stuff on the internet, but then putting out your own creativity from it. So it's a tool, this technology. So I do worry that the tool then becomes the God, and you are paying.
Exactly.
So this is
a sort of suppression of talent, you think?
Challenges in education it's just that, suppression. Like when a child paints a picture, and this is not what the teacher wants, it's what the child wants. He may have blue grass, he may have yellow grass, but the teacher is not willing to accept the fact that there is blue grass and there's yellow grass and there's orange grass. And the teacher will put the child down to a level to say, you know you can't paint, you can't draw. This is not the picture you're supposed to draw. It has happened to children all over the world. It is still happening because the educators are not upgraded in thought. Educators come with the qualification of an educator, but is not tuned to the psychology of the child, because the child will come with so much freshness. He's a new being. I'm talking about a 5-year-old child, a 15-year-old child. The thwarting of the creative juices. This is what, even in writing. You tell a child to write. I mean, this is going back to so many years in all our childhood. My pet, my house, my whatever. Has it changed so much? If you just take a child's English writing book, let's say grade 3 or 4, and the child is asked to write an essay. Is it on climate change or environment pollution or to the newspapers? Yes, they write about all that. But a child will be asked to write about my pet. Why are we subjecting children to this frame? This is the challenge in education that we will be facing for the next 15 years if, like you said, Minoli, we, in a bigger box, are not getting to get to that point.
Because we can't think out of the box, that's why.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
also the problem, because we are also victims of this system.
Exactly.
Yes.
And we really need to, find, because actually it's gone on for so long,
So long.
that we are probably now going into the second, probably the third generation.
Of
So we
course.
have grandparents who are, in the
Absolutely.
box, and how do you, so that's why I think, COVID gets us an opportunity to break free of
To reassess.
to reassess all of that.
The new normal.
Yes, and I fully agree with Shanti that we need to be aware now. When my kids were going to preschool, I used to wait till the class is over and the teacher asks a question, and without exception, all the kids want to answer that. They are eager, and some kids will put both their hands up, and often the teacher asks the question, the kid doesn't know the answer. And it's not a problem to them, But these same kids, when they come to university, you ask them to answer a question, I mean, they are not willing to
Pin drop
express-
silence.
Pin drop
Yes,
silence, and
yes.
so what happened? What happened in 15 years or with 13 years of education?
Thwarting of creativity.
We have killed that initiative,
Yes.
the desire to learn, and we have brought them to be silent and to just listen, take it, absorb it. So like Ashok was saying earlier, that he fears that post-COVID might even increase people wanting education for the purpose of the certification. Absolutely, and that is a danger, because it becomes now easier to get a degree or certificate.
Precisely.
Easier to give it, and universities can make money.
And they're only too happy.
Too happy, and the economics come into play as well. But what are we giving? We are certifying a certain amount of knowledge, but these other things we are not certifying.
Under the radar.
Under the radar. And so an employer, what does he want, let's say? Does he want knowledge? Well, of course, he can go to his Google phone and will probably be able to get much better up-to-date knowledge. Does he want a manager who is able to manage his people holistically, and so I think these are the questions that need to be looked at. So what's the end product of what we want in education as a citizen in society? Now, we have many problems to deal with in our country, and a lot of this is because of the things we talked about earlier, lack of understanding, lack of tolerance, lack of many things, empathy. So we can blame many historical events and even present events, but the fact that we cannot and have not been able to solve these means that there's something wrong in our own education system. So I do hope that return to normal doesn't mean that we go back to where it was. In that case, I think we would lose this.
Yes.
But what is
There's whole lack of confidence in children.
That's
what is worrying.
Exactly. What is the solution? Because when a child comes to preschool, let's start there, because that's where it all starts. When a child comes to preschool, the parents have already thought of the scholarship. When the child gets to the scholarship, they've already thought of university. And within those those years, the development of values, ethics, behavior, cultural elements, religion, everything is at a standstill. Religion, you just imbibe like the rest of it. You just imbibe and practice to a point, and then write your paper, and then you have religion. But the rest of it, children don't have empathy for another child. Sometimes children, they steal other children's assignments. They plagiarize without, at the blink of an eye.
Exactly. It's the norm,
It's the
questioning
norm.
is the problem.
And parents are part of this whole
Yes,
thing.
absolutely. It
Exactly.
is at you know,
They
the
say-
Pressure brought
competitiveness.
upon the child, pressure.
competitiveness,
But why are we
yeah.
bringing pressure?
Absolutely.
Why are we bringing pressure? Who is pressurizing? The people who now at preschool, there's supposed to be testing. What are they testing for?
Mm.
What are they testing?
Knowledge.
Knowledge of what?
Mm.
they
Shapes,
should be
colors, letters,
playing.
numbers,
They
the
should be
fact
playing
that the
at-
child can sing or
preschool.
whatever, or whether the child is cognitively
Mm.
aware that he can go from A to B. So in some schools there is this test for about 45 minutes. Some schools, in the government schools, there's no testing at all. But when the child goes to grade 1, the teacher will pull in the plug and say, this child has a problem. He's not listening to me. So off he goes to the SSU, Special Study Unit, and they've already labeled the child saying he's developmentally delayed. He may be autistic. He may be having ADD. This is a normal child we are labeling.
Is that not a worldwide thing? Don't you think that it's happening everywhere? That
I think it's like a trend.
we're only too happy to label
Absolutely.
ADD this, that. We're
Yes.
inventing diseases.
Because it brings
every-
in money as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to understand that. When you label a child, you send him to A, B, C points, and you get those reports, and each report is about 7,500.
Mm.
How many people can afford this?
Also, psychologically, it sets the child back. Whereas
Yes.
we know
And think
Not
of the
only
fear,
you.
fear of the child.
The
Yeah.
parents
Having to
as
go through
well.
all these tests.
Yes. So these are the challenges in education, and parents have to be aware that they are being they are actually gullible subjects.
Or being more over enthusiastic over the child. And
Sometimes,
I feel what they have lost in their lives.
yes.
They're trying to see through the child.
Yeah, but sometimes parents think, okay, my child is not as good as. I always say your 5 fingers are not the same. I mean, let the child be.
Mm.
Okay, he will grow but then grade 1 doesn't allow the growth. Grade 1 puts in the steps. Grade 1 puts in all those evaluations. And by the time the child goes to grade 2, he's got so much of flack from society, from parents, from other teachers, then he's got this whole thing about tuition. So,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
so
that's-
these are the
Yeah.
challenges in education
Mm.
that we as society, I think we have to address. Otherwise, we'll be having this conversation in the next maybe 15
It'll
years if we
continue.
are around.
So I think parents are actually influenced by society. They try to follow because they want the best for their children. So society seems to have established some goalpost, and I think they push their children. So I think we need to re-examine those goalposts.
So in your opinion, what is the best?
So let me paraphrase this. I mean, children and parents need ready markers to see where their children are. What are the markers that are there? Okay, year 5 scholarship. So you send there and they've got to get that mark. So after that, O levels. Again, a certain number of A's. Then you get to A level, then your Z score. Then when kids come even to university, they cannot get out of a number. They are all number driven. And then they look for a number. You don't need one in the university, so they get the EZ score, the GPA, you know. So they, you know, and they want a first class.
Yeah.
They don't know why they want a first class, but they want
just
a
want
first
it.
class, you know, because they cannot get out of what has been put into their number, that they must get a certain number to be successful. So a few years ago, you know, when we get industry to come and like interview and talk to some of our students before they pick them up. So there was this company can come and say, you know, look, one thing we are not going to ask is your academic, because the university will tell you're passed or failed, that is good enough for us. What your GPA, you know, because you have passed, that's enough for us. I mean, that sort of shook me at that time, because, you know, we are also trying to, you know, do. And they said, no, that's enough, but what we need are the other things, which we sadly label as soft skills. You know, they are the essence of what makes a person.
Yes.
And I think we need to get out of these things as tagging them, you know, as you know, like excess luggage, you know, the options, where they are actually the core things. And some leading companies have now matured into looking for these things, which they say are, you need to have basic skills. So somebody certifies that, they're happy. So we need, for example, in university, to be a lecturer, you must have a first class or a second upper. Anything less than that, probably, it's a long process to get it. That's fine. We do need people with a certain academic caliber. But there's no testing for anything else. Absolutely nothing. So the entire government machinery has no testing for the things that we've been talking about for the last half an hour.
And if you're in an interview where there's maybe a PhD candidate, they would naturally be selected for the lecture post, whereas there could be someone much well suited with a bachelor's or a master's. And I've actually gone through that a couple of times as well when it comes to promotions.
So actually it comes down to parenting as well, because if you talk about Sri Lankan parenting, a mother who parents her son, a mother who parents a daughter, they parent differently. Because when I ask them, does your child, this is like a 3, 4, 5-year-old child, does he help you to make roti or whatever? No, it's like one of those worst questions that can ever come to them. But there are some parents who say, he loves to be in the kitchen. So it all depends on the type of mentality of the parents. I'm not talking about people who are living in the villages. I'm talking about people in urban areas in Colombo. They think taking a broom to sweep is beneath a child's standing. What kind of ridiculous idea is that?
Well, I have seen people in the supermarket just waiting.
Oh yes, that's another.
The cashier to bag their stuff. They won't do it themselves.
No.
So it holds up everyone in the queue, 50 items are clicked up, and then the poor girl behind the counter or the guy behind the counter has to bag the stuff.
So it's to do with attitudes.
It's to do with attitudes. Selfish ways. Well, I'm upper. I'm the upper class. So you pack my things.
Or I'm paying you money, so you better do it. That is
you don't think of the people behind you.
So the child who is with the mother, watching all this, imbibing all this and becoming the adult who is continuing the process.
It's a continuity of that
so
same
we shouldn't be too surprised about things like that. But we should be working on, like university, if they're asking for soft skills, I think it has to come from day one.
Exactly.
Where boys and girls shouldn't be ashamed of the fact that they can cook. There are some girls who say, I can't cook. What is that?
We have to stop now for a commercial break. We'll see you in a bit. Back to TALKWALK. I think we go back to Irushi and let her elaborate and talk more about her animation. And we are waiting excitedly to see it on film.
Thanks, Minoli. Well, actually, what Professor Amal was saying about the specific markers and these achievements or goals that we try to reach one by one, including the scholarship and O-levels and A-levels, and then you aim to get a certain number of A's. And honestly, I wasn't an A-grade student, and I feel like, I don't know, I've always felt that maybe I wasn't smart enough or good enough, but I'm doing okay. I've done quite well for myself with my creative work, and I'm working on this animated series right now, which features a group of women who are, I would like to say, like me, who have found their own path and followed their own passion and figured life out for themselves. And one of the people featured on this animated series is Asha Devos, who is a marine biologist. And as a child, she was always inspired by whales, and especially the blue whale skeleton that you find in our National Museum. So she had been curious about how such a big animal exists and what it eats, and if that is the size of the thing, how big are its babies, and she would constantly ask all these questions, and I think it's that curiosity that drove her to eventually do a PhD in marine biology and become who she is today and study the blue whale populations of Sri Lanka. So she's just one of the people featured on this series. But going back again, this is, like Professor Amal was saying, there's something lacking in our education system, even though there are all these things that we achieve. I don't know, I feel like there's a whole lot that we need to do on our own to make up for that gap. So I think that's what I'm doing through my creative work and my animation.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So you were talking about the creativity and Ashok as a writer. So basically we are all trying to see that how a child can be benefited, how a child even when he doesn't have the economic background, how can he be benefited in a school? And so this is all to do with teacher upgrading. And when the teachers pass out, are they given, I'm just curious, are they given markers to say how do you include children with creativity and imagination in the classroom?
I think I'm not really sure of the answer to your question, but I think the problem is that it's difficult. You know, I mean, you're doing a math problem, there's only one answer, you get it right or get it wrong, and I mean,
math is math.
But even the other things, when it is written down, it's so hard to compare with you know, the textbook and say you got it right or wrong. But as we go into more the creative stuff, you know, the things that we've been talking about which actually make up for that, there are no assessments, and because those assessments are difficult, they are never yes or no, pass or fail, and so I think our education system doesn't have the scope or even the training, as you actually asked, to do that, and even in university we are struggling to give some value, but it's something which even the students don't appreciate because they've never been assessed like that before.
Can I ask why?
That's what we've been missing in our education system for now generations.
You're putting so much money into other things.
I think the problem is really deep-rooted. Until both the teachers and the parents have some kind of respect for creativity and people who are creative, we're never going to get there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the parents are obsessed, as you say, with getting a qualification. My son needs to get this job, my daughter needs to have this much before she does this, and then that, and whatever. The teachers, of course, can, as Amal says, you know, it's much simpler to grade a student on exam results than on creativity. But there is no real respect for creativity. I think that is at the root of the problem.
Is it a Sri Lankan thing that we don't have respect for it, or because
more
in
so,
other countries, they do value this.
I think creativity like denotes being like a little sissy.
Yes, or and more than that,
encouraged.
being rather useless at anything else.
Yeah.
If all else fails, become an
Oh
artist.
my gosh.
Don't worry.
do something aesthetic.
The last refuge of the desperate.
And
is to be
boys
an artist.
boys don't do ballet.
No,
Exactly.
they don't.
I mean, you know, but I mean, I always notice whenever it's time to get sponsorship for the golf festival, you have to beg, you have to go down on your knees and say, please give us a bit of money. This is really important, trust me, it's important. Is it really? And then you find they've given millions to some completely useless
Rugby match,
project
cricket
or
match.
whatever. I won't mention names.
Sporting
you
events,
know,
yes.
whatever.
It is
But-
I factor. I factor. You give the money where you get the I factor there.
Yeah.
It's me, I myself.
Yeah, whatever it is, that there's no respect for art at all. And anyone who breaks through that glass ceiling and gets somewhere only gets it when they have some kind of validation from abroad. Then we will sit up and say,
Oh yes,
you know,
definitely.
he won this prize in so-and-so
Yeah.
place, or he's this or he's that. But till then, nothing.
Absolutely.
I think we need to put values and people understand rupees, for example. So employers must actually, in their grading systems, government must take an, in now I know in the earlier there was nothing even for an interview, but now we say can they communicate and things like that, but I think there's a whole heap more
to go
that an interviewer should be assessing of all of these things. We never ask about creativity. We never ask people to express their abilities to to make value judgments and things like that. So I think governments, when they're hiring, private sector when they're hiring, they need to put in those at least a checkbox and create value for these things. And I think that's where we can send the message down, look, these are also things that you need to develop in. Until then, the system accepts a qualification, that's it, and even parents would think, that is it. So that message needs to go.
I think
And totally lacking communication.
of course, yeah.
They can't communicate.
Yeah.
So how do you proceed? How do you go to the future without communication? Your piece of paper with the qualification is not going to communicate.
I think there's also this reverence for the system as is or has been. We're so enamored of this rock solid system that's been there for thousands of years, supposedly, that we are very reluctant to go against it or to go outside it. So even in a huge office or in, say, the municipality or whatever, there are all these rules, hundreds of rules. Nobody really knows why those rules are there. I'm a builder in my other life, so I've been through this many a time. There are all these strange rules. And you ask the person in front of you at the desk, why must it be like this? They have no idea.
That's
And
just it. That is the way.
Quite often those rules were there from the British Times in 1853 or whatever that rule was put in, and it's still there, and people are still adhering to this when it goes against all common sense of today. So I mean, we do have this reverence for the system, and nobody's willing
Question that.
to question or to go against
that's
it.
because that's the problem is there.
Yes.
And so it's a
It's a
self-perpetuating
self-perpetuating
That's
thing.
it.
problem.
Actually, I feel
Absolutely.
like what Professor Amal mentioned about math being not creative because there's
I'm
either
a
X or
mathematician,
Y.
trust me, pure
So
maths.
I feel like maybe that is the mindset that needs to change, because even mathematics can be extremely
is.
It
creative.
is very
And if you
creative,
take
actually.
Alice in Wonderland, it was written by someone who, Lewis
Yes.
Carroll was
Yeah.
he studied
in
logic,
my,
right?
In my,
Logic
in
and
my
math.
old college, Christchurch.
Yeah, so you can be absolutely creative, and I feel like what you need is just that little element of curiosity to ask new
Exactly,
questions
yeah.
and solve new math
No,
problems.
but you can't ask
So
new questions. It's out of order. You have to go according to what the teacher wants and what your parents want.
So we need to
Yeah.
retrain the teachers.
We have to. We
And
have to
retrain the
Exactly.
parents while we're at
we have to
it.
change the parents first.
Yeah.
Let the child grow. Let that inherent talent come out. Then you'll see the potential, the real potential of that child.
Are we ready to accept all these things?
Well, we better.
It is.
I
it
feel
is
like we're speaking
we
from a
better,
very
yes.
Well-
privileged place to
Well,
say
I mean,
this,
no
but
better time than COVID. This is the
Absolutely.
Exactly.
time
I
to
think
use
that's
that.
the message.
That's where it is.
Yes.
Yeah, we have an opportunity. I mean,
Sure.
take for example, many cities, once they've been devastated by fire, they've made
They've rebuilt it.
They've rebuilt it. I mean, they put
Better
things
than
that they could
before,
never do.
yeah.
I mean, we had
Yes.
tsunami. We haven't really made.
We
much
missed all the
missed
opportunity.
all
We
of
missed the
that.
train.
Yes.
We had the
Let's
end
see
of a
every-
war,
Yeah.
and really, and now with COVID, I'm sure some countries will get ahead because of the what COVID or post-COVID allows them. So, are we going to take that opportunity?
Why is this regression when we should be progressing? I think we have to tell our viewers that they have to get together and make sure that this progress takes place, and the country should not go backwards for the future generation. We have lived our lives. We can say selfishly, well, it doesn't matter now for
It's
us.
too late for us.
Too late for us.
For the young ones.
The young ones. Think about it.
Why is it too late for us?
Oh, I just said that. I don't mean
withdraw
it.
that.
I was a bit worried there.
No, it's our duty now because we've lived the years, we've seen it.
Exactly.
A younger person may not have that experience, And so I think it's our duty to at least get the ball rolling, to put pressure to make these things happen, and not wait for the younger people to live another a generation and
Frustrated.
Go through the
exactly same thing.
we-
Going through
Yeah.
so much frustration.
I wrote somewhere in one of my books that all it takes for a Sri Lankan to succeed is to get on a plane. So, Sri Lankans do fabulously well when they leave the island. So we need to change that. We need to stop.
Exactly.
We need to.
Why are
keep
they
those-
going? You must
keep
find
our
out.
talent here.
Yeah,
We need to keep
exactly.
them
And
here.
that is why this loyalty factor. When a child is in, let's say, O levels, A levels, parents are always thinking of where is he going? Is he going
Yes.
to Australia, Canada,
Yes.
America? Where? Why not Sri Lanka?
Yeah.
But they would say Sri Lanka is a beautiful country, it's great to visit, all these plus points. But when it comes to education, it's always grass is green on the other side. And we say, correct me if I'm wrong, Professor, we say we have the best education system. We have free education, okay? But people take the free education and they leave the country, and the brain drain just happens automatically. And then at the end of the day, we are left with the refuse. I'm sorry, but we are all part of that.
Yeah.
But we've been out and we've come back because we wanted to serve. I was in Indonesia for such a long time, and I wanted to come back, and my father said, "Don't even think about it." I said, "No, I need to come back."
Yeah, our education system, I think, it has the good, the bad, and the ugly. And certainly we can talk a lot about it. Certainly the access to education is something, the free education as it's called, is something that we've done well. But then we have not addressed what's bad, and less so what is downright ugly. In universities we've lived with ragging, for example.
Oh, yes.
And done very little, actually, sadly. So I think these things we need to see. We keep overemphasizing the good without actually addressing what is bad and worse still, what is ugly. And I think until we do that, it's a cancer that continues to eat, and even what is good one day is going to come undone. And it's already happening.
Yes.
It's happening. So we need to be objective. We need to be realistic, and we need to be actually, willing to take it head on and change.
And the ragging, that must be why most parents want their children to go overseas for their studies. Because
That's possible.
so that is one factor that we have to get rid. It's a real canker. The fear of that child going into the university, they go to study, but they are used for sordid purposes through ragging. So
And
the
that is a
moment we can
mentality.
change this.
Yes. So this is a mental status of people who access education. These are the real challengers. People who have gone to university here, who
Yeah.
have gone through it all,
So
they kind of come out of it on a totally different level, saying, I didn't expect it to be so bad. On the flip side, they said nothing happened to me.
exactly, yes. So this mentality doesn't happen after they get to campus.
Yeah.
It's something that
That was
begins
there.
there. And that's
Definitely.
why we find it so difficult to stop it in campus. Because if it was something that starts, well, physical expression of it may be years, but then it's years of actually very bad, attitudes, and people thought about, if you have power, it's okay to put somebody down, that kind of thing unaddressed. And when they have this freedom, and a power to sort of harass somebody or put somebody down, it's an expression of years of bad mentoring.
So in your opinion, is it parenting?
All of it, yes.
Yes.
It's parenting, it's schools, it's even our religious teaching. All of that have failed to do this. And often I think the problem is put into the universities. Of course, the universities have, but it's accumulation of all of these things that actually present itself when they have, a little more freedom and in an organized manner to do this.
more so psychological deprivation, I
Yes,
think.
of course.
They are aggressive when they go out because they're not allowed to do anything what they want to do at home. So they show off when they go out and they get these cliques. And then they become very strong and they bully the other. So we have to stop this.
So bullying is
not
actually
accepted.
it is not accepted, but it is inculcated in some in homes sometimes.
But there is this huge frustration. What's good for Colombo is not good.
Yes.
I mean, the two different, so we really have to, that social unrest is there, or that idea that there is a difference. And it is to do with things like speaking English or whatever, because they're sort of suppressed, or the teaching of it, you get this kind of difference. So people use that as an opportunity to get their own back. I know a friend of mine, a poet, she says that when she went and she was wearing a skirt, immediately she was singled out. This is at Peradeniya, where she went, So it starts much earlier than university, as you say. There's a sort of feeling of us versus them, and we'll get him somehow.
But Ashok, now I keep learning about society all the time. Now earlier we had these issues of English speaking, non-English speaking, then race based and all of that. Now we find that it keeps on polarizing to an extent that I know of universities where students, before they come, if you're from, let's say, Anuradhapura district, you're told you have to go and stay in that hostel. That is for, and somebody from Monaragala has to go and live there. What are we creating? Distrust. I mean, now all those earlier
other things
labels are gone.
Gone.
Now, how do you distinguish between somebody from Monaragala and Anuradhapura? On what basis? Are we going back to the tribal things?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
As I was saying earlier,
are we going backwards
we're
or
encouraging
forwards?
tribalism.
Exactly. So that's that's long before they come to university.
Yes.
People subscribing to that way of thinking. Parents who don't care about that. So I think these are the undercurrents that have actually been there. Not adequately studied, but definitely unaddressed.
Brewing. Social disparity.
But also this tribalism, that's very worrying.
So imagine people who are coming out of the university with this kind of mindset, classing themselves according to geographical placements and all that. How do they even get into the bigger picture, like the private sector? What kind of mentality would they have? I mean, it is going to be a problem for them to interact with the others.
Exactly. So what I see is there is this hypocrisy in their lives.
Yes.
If you want to be a team player, for the job purpose, you're fine, but it doesn't come from within you. There is no appreciation of diversity or of difference of background, but you live with it.
I'm always amazed at how we Sri Lankans are able to maintain contrary positions at the same time. We're very happy, black, white.
Oh yes.
It's amazing. I mean, on the one hand, it's a strength, but on the other hand, my gosh, it's a terrible, terrible thing to have.
I've actually studied my undergraduate and master's both in government universities here, and oh gosh, the hypocrisy, it's crazy because in the first year I did experience ragging quite severely. I mean, initially they let me off thinking I was some foreign exchange student, and then once they figured out I was from Colombo, it was really bad. And in the second year, the same people who ragged me came and asked me to help them with their English papers. So they do. It's the hypocrisy is very real. Yeah.
And also they see this. I have this terminology that I use. It's called the Machang schools. When you want a job, you go to a particular school, and if the person who's interviewing you is from your old school, and
you're assured of a.
And also it's a case of kind of saying, okay, if I want a job, I just pick up the phone and say, Machang, I was in college with you, can you remember? And then it becomes one of those classes.
Yeah, but it's tribalism again.
Yes, yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been having this for many, and sometimes we thought that was good, if
Yeah.
it came from the right background. But I think these are the things that have not been addressed. Some of them have been glorified, and now when it has become a cancer across society, we're wondering what went wrong. So I think all of these need to be addressed. Now in universities, we call them universities because you get people from different backgrounds coming, and
Exactly.
but they go back even more polarized. What are we doing, or why do we
Yes,
have
yes,
universities
yes.
if
that's the end.
that's
end
you're going to
result.
have some learning center in that particular district, so that we want people from different backgrounds, because that's part of the education, to learn with each other, learn from each other, not only from your tutor. That whole environment of learning, debating, appreciating different points of view. And I think we've lost that value, and that's why a lot of our students are saying, Zoom, is good enough.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
we've lost that value of
that togetherness.
exactly of community-based learning.
Yeah.
So this is, as you said, the danger that we can say, we are not losing anything, not being in
Not
class.
being in class.
So let's
Yeah.
continue with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah, particularly for us with this kind of tribalistic attitudes, so it's very dangerous.
On that note, I'm afraid we have to come to the end of this program. I hope you enjoyed it and you will take part in it, and don't forget to tune in next Wednesday, Art Television. Up until then, this is goodbye from Minoli de Almeida.